Welcome to the Drake Escape. You've probably heard lots of people talk about Dyson in terms of the business lessons that you can get from his story, and it's rich with them. I mean, he made something like 5,000 prototypes, which is a great example of iterative design. He made more prototypes even than Edison did of the light bulb. But also as an example of disruption. I mean, Hoover bags were a huge income for Hoover, as they were similarly for every other business that Dyson took his design to and tried to sell it to them. And they all turned him down because they were so deeply invested in their traditional business model. And a very similar story, I guess, to when Netflix tried to sell themselves to Blockbuster, or when Kodak's engineer first came up with the idea of the digital camera. But where did Dyson get his idea from in the first place? Well, it turns out he'd been visiting sawmills and he'd seen these cyclonic kind of extractor fans that sawmill used to take the dust away. And he thought, that's a great idea. Maybe I can use that. Now, you may have noticed while I've been talking that I'm sitting here in front of the River Thames. I'm in London today. I'm about to go on the Underground. And the Underground map is another great example of the same kind of thing. Now, we're all familiar with it. It's a beautiful, clear triumph of design in a way, but it didn't always look that way. They used to use normal standard maps of London with stations marked on and wiggly lines in between them, which were really difficult to read. And it stayed that way right up until 1934, when a guy called Harry Beck decided to come up with a completely new design. And he took his inspiration from electrical circuits. So electrical circuits just showed the components and the connections. His just showed the stations and their connections. And you know, it bears very little resemblance to the London above ground, but it works beautifully. It was a breakthrough design, and it changed the way that a lot of those systems are now mapped. I'll just give you one more example. So Steve Jobs, back in 2005, he gave his commencement speech at Stanford University. And in there, Steve talked about how he'd gone to a calligraphy class while he was a student that bore no relation to any of those studies. It was just on a whim. But that calligraphy class inspired him to choose beautiful fonts for the Apple. It's inspired him to do beautiful design. It inspired him with the real differentiation that Apple brought into that market at the time, which was about elegance and beauty and style. And one of the great things about being a consultant is I get to work with loads of different businesses in loads of different industries, in loads of different sectors, and you can't help but be inspired. But what about you? How are you increasing your exposure to different ways of doing things, to different thinking from different sectors, from different disciplines? What will be the inspiration for your next breakthrough idea?